Kimi Antonelli just became the first driver in Formula 1 history to convert his first 3 pole positions into race wins. 19 years old with a 100% pole to win record. And he did it with Lando Norris breathing down his neck for a big chunk of the race. Welcome to the Racing Roundtable. This is my review of the 2026 Miami Grand Prix, and trust me, there's quite a bit to unpack. We've got a spin being labelled as a genius move, a typical Ferrari weekend, and a brand new award for the worst performer of the day. Let's get into it. So Antonelli does it again, and the more you look at that stat, the more incredible it is. Leclerc, for example, has had pole position after pole position turn into nothing. Whether that's because of strategy, reliability, or just bad luck, Antonelli converts every single time so far, and he's doing it in a season where you'd expect George Russell to be the one leading. And what's more impressive is the composure and the mentality that Antonelli is showing. Norris was on him after the pit stops, and Leclerc was actually leading at one point early in the race. But Antonelli just managed the race. He just managed what he was doing. No cracks under pressure, and he seems to genuinely enjoy the Miami track because last year he got a sprint pole. And he's making George Russell's life very difficult. Russell finished a whole 43 seconds behind his own teammate. That's a massive gap. And you could even argue it's a statement because it's now putting pressure on Russell. That should give Russell something to worry about. If he wasn't slightly worried already, he should be a bit now, because although it's very early, Antonelli definitely has the momentum now in the championship. And let's not forget, Mercedes have upgrades coming in Montreal. If they can re-establish their pace advantage, this championship, constructors-wise, could be wrapped up very quickly. And Antonelli currently leads by 20 points over Russell with 4 races done. So here's my question to you guys. Drop your answer in the comments. Is Antonelli already better than Russell right now? Yes or no? Because looking at the facts at this early point in the season, the gap is in points, pace, composure, results, and I'm not 100% convinced he is 100% better than Russell right now, but the evidence suggests otherwise, doesn't it? So let me know your thoughts in the comments. So the podium was Antonelli, Norris and Piastri, and based on the last 2 races, I think McLaren do have to be considered the closest challenger to Mercedes right now. They won the sprint comfortably with Norris and had a 1-2. They could have had potentially a race win in Japan if things had gone differently, although I think it would have been very difficult with Antonelli's pace. I didn't watch the Japanese race in its entirety, so I don't know the full context in the moment, but from what I heard, Antonelli pretty much, the pace regardless would have won that race. And McLaren or Norris feel like they could have won here too in Miami. Norris himself sounded frustrated after the race. He felt that he should have won, and I'm not mad at it because McLaren were close the whole weekend. They are that close. But the mitigating factor for me is the upgrade cycle. McLaren, Ferrari and Red Bull all brought upgrades to Miami, while Mercedes didn't, and that's crucial. So this might actually be as close as it gets gap-wise before Montreal Mercedes blitzes everyone again from the get-go. And as long as Mercedes upgrades actually work and deliver the improvements they're expecting, I'm expecting Mercedes to re-establish their dominance. Ferrari had their chances early in the season, but they couldn't hang with the Mercedes once the pace really mattered. And McLaren and Miami have shown that they can challenge all race long, and that's something Ferrari haven't been able to do so far. So it looks like we're back to regular Ferrari settings. Max Verstappen qualified second and was genuinely strong for most of the weekend with the improved Red Bull. But he made a rare mistake spinning on lap 1, and it basically destroyed any chance he had at a podium or even a race win, if that was possible. He recovered well on the hard tyres with a long stint, but once Piastri, Leclerc and Russell closed up, he was done. His tyres were washed compared to the fresher rubber, and he ended up finishing in 5th place on track, and that would have been 6th if Leclerc hadn't spun on the last lap and sustained damage. It's a credible recovery, but it was from a position of his own making. And as I'm recording this video, it's actually been announced that Verstappen got a penalty, 5-second penalty, for crossing the pit exit line, but he'll keep 5th place because Lewis finished 10 seconds behind him. Now I have to talk about Martin Brundle's commentary on that spin, because I've heard a lot of things in F1. I've been watching F1 since 2008 properly, but I haven't heard someone make a mistake and have it described as genius. Brundle was praising Max for the way he controlled the spin, but hang on, Max made that mistake, he spun, and that's not genius, that's damage limitation at best, because okay, he did well to not to hit the wall like Leclerc did later on in the race or get collected by someone, but at the end of the day, he made a mistake. I don't know why he's trying to find a silver lining in that, because Max made a rare mistake. You can't just call it a genius move, because he's trying to spin up his tires or something to avoid a crash. I don't get it. And if it had gone badly, and it could have, think about Grosjean in Spain 2018, because I think he took out Gasly and Hülkenberg trying to do the exact same thing. So would Brundle have called that genius too? I don't think so. Also, I don't see how Max won driver of the day when he put himself in the position he was in by spinning. Of course, he did well to recover, but let's keep it real. Let's keep it a stack. He's in a car that's faster than most, so it wasn't like he was going to really struggle. If it was the pre-upgrade Red Bull, which wasn't a great car, let's say that, it wasn't a great car, and they pulled off this recovery, I'd be saying something else. I'd be giving him more credit. I'd be saying something completely different. But he's in a Red Bull car that's been upgraded, and he's proven that it can challenge for pole positions, and it's obviously much faster than the midfield cars, whereas the pre-upgrade Red Bull, it wasn't that clear, depending on the track. So I'm not going to give him props for overtaking all those back markers, and the wheel-to-wheel racing was very, very suspect again from Max. Very suspect. I'll get on to my driver of the day later on in the video, but I don't think it's Max. I don't think so. The glaze is real. Let's call it what it is. I know fans are going to support their favourite driver, and the driver of the day award doesn't mean much in the grand scheme of things, but I'm going to move on. Ferrari. What could have been a solid weekend with the optimism surrounding the upgrades ended up with Leclerc finishing in 8th place after his penalty, which was announced as I'm recording this video. He spun into the wall on the last lap and then had to cut some corners due to the damage. He got a 20-second penalty. I was expecting a penalty because the precedent is pretty clear. Lewis got a penalty in Singapore last year for cutting corners after his brake failure, even at low speed, so I don't see why Leclerc should be treated any differently, and my thought process was correct.
Today, I mean, you got a fantastic lead through your start and then lost out in the pit stops, and then that last lap, heartbreak as well. Can you just tell me what was going on and where it went away from you today?
My mistake. I mean, it's all on me, and I don't have much to add other than that. Very disappointed with my mistake. It shouldn't happen. I've pushed very hard in the second to last lap. I thought it was a good idea to kind of let Oscar go for him to get for me to get the overtake. I knew it was going to be very difficult to stay in front otherwise, and but yeah, I mean, it was very poor decisions, and in the space of 4 corners I put a very strong race in the bin, so I'm very frustrated about that. Yeah, not much more to say.
Leclerc still making mistakes like that spin on the last lap is really telling, because he is one of the best drivers on the grid. But you've thrown away the whole weekend with that mistake and subsequent penalty, and he even gambled with letting Piastri through so that he could attempt an overtake on the last lap, and that gamble didn't pay off. So it wasn't a good performance at all from Leclerc. He just, like he said, threw away the whole weekend in the bin in the space of 4 corners. Like, yeah, he just wasted the whole weekend. That was not a good performance from him at the end of the day. As for Lewis, I say this as a Lewis Hamilton fan, it was an underwhelming weekend, in my opinion. He wasn't matching Leclerc all weekend. Yes, he was decently close at times, but he wasn't really surpassing Leclerc. And then he sustained damage after that clash with Colapinto on lap 1. Colapinto could have perhaps done more to avoid it because he didn't leave Lewis space at all. And at the end of the day, you're fighting someone who's in a faster car than you. Luckily for Colapinto, that clash didn't destroy his race, but the same can't be said for Lewis. And with that damage, he could stay ahead of the midfield comfortably, but he couldn't really close on anyone ahead of him. So any potential chance of him battling with the guys ahead was vaporized with that incident. I think he also had a power unit and gearbox troubles, so he was basically nerfed on Sunday, and there was a portion of the race where he was able to stay close to Russell despite the damage. But yeah, it's a case of what could have been for Lewis. Canada is a very different track and one of his best historically, so I'm expecting a much bigger performance from him in Montreal. If he doesn't perform well compared to Leclerc, then he'll start looking funny in the light to me, because you can't keep starting on the back foot compared to Leclerc. And obviously Leclerc is doing something better than Lewis is at the start of the weekend. Whether that's operationally or with how he's driving the car, Lewis didn't maximize the car the way Leclerc did for most of the weekend. So I still think Lewis can operate at the levels that Norris, Verstappen, Piastri, Leclerc, Russell and now Antonelli can, but he's not showing it consistently enough, and he makes it harder for himself by starting off on the back foot on a lot of weekends, and he's trying to learn how the car is behaving with a completely new setup during qualifying, meaning he cannot maximize, or it's very unlikely for him to maximize the pace of the car when he's learning on the fly. Who do you think is the bigger threat to Mercedes going into Canada, McLaren or Ferrari? Let me know your reasoning in the comments. I'll be reading them and I may leave a reply too. So let's do a quick run through the points. Colapinto finished 8th, matching his best F1 result, and was comfortable there for most of the race. He didn't really have to fight anyone for it either after lap 1, which tells its own story about how he's performed this weekend apart from the clash with Lewis. But the fact that he's matching his personal best while running a decent race is exactly what you want from a driver, building momentum. And it looks like he might be earning his seat, but he needs to do this more often when the car is capable, to silence the doubters that he has. Sainz and Albon took 9th and 10th for Williams' double points finish, which is a real positive for them, especially if those weight savings from Miami are starting to pay off. So maybe this is the start of something for them, with both cars in the points regularly going forward. Outside the points, Lawson took out Gasly, which destroyed both of their afternoons, but apparently it was due to Lawson having gearbox issues, so the stewards didn't give him a penalty and he also retired from the race anyway. Hadjar made a mistake around the same time and we all saw him berate himself, and he wasn't really close to Verstappen's pace all weekend, which continues to be a theme at Red Bull. The upgrades seem to unlock something in Max that the second driver just can't access, and Hadjar needs to find a way to turn that around with the help of Red Bull. Let's not just put this on Hadjar. Red Bull needs to help him as well, or he'll be another victim of the second car syndrome. Hülkenberg appear to have had a reliability issue, which is a genuine concern for Audi. Their season is heading in the wrong direction now and they need to sort out the power unit situation before this becomes a real problem. So a course correction is needed over at the forums of Audi. Let's get into the awards. The Racing Roundtable Driver of the Day is Kimi Antonelli. At 19 years old, against more experienced drivers on a street circuit with real pressure from Norris all race, he built his performance through the weekend and delivered when it mattered. At his age, with his experience, doing what he's doing, the kid is special, but we already knew that, didn't we? And now, the first ever Roadman of the Day, which is a new award, and this goes to the driver who had the worst weekend or race or performance. And the inaugural winner, for me, is Isaac Hadjar. You were already starting from the back of the grid, already behind your teammate on pace, and then you hit the wall that no one else hit all weekend. And it's a harsh way to launch a new award, but the results are the results, and Isaac Hadjar is the Roadman of the Day. The first ever Racing Roundtable Roadman of the Day, by the way. So, rating the race, I'd give it a 6.5 out of 10. There were interesting moments. The top teams were genuinely close. There was some yo-yo action, but the Miami circuit doesn't favour great prolonged wheel-to-wheel racing, and too much of the race settled into a sort of stalemate. So it was good, but not really great. And I dread to think what would have happened if Max had a pit stop around the same time that the front runners did, because he at least had an offset strategy which could have made things interesting. So yeah, good but not great. So next up is Montreal, which is historically one of Lewis Hamilton's strongest tracks, and I personally think it could tell us whether Lewis can get back on track and compete for the podium again. Mercedes have upgrades coming which should worry their rivals a bit because they won in Miami without upgrades, and Norris is hungry and not giving up. So can he sort of challenge Mercedes? And we'll see if Verstappen can continue troubling the front runners if he has a clean weekend, and more specifically a clean race where he isn't forcing drivers off the track again. As we all know, Montreal has the potential to produce great races, so hopefully we have a fascinating weekend. Let me know your driver of the day, your roadman of the day, your race rating. Drop them in the comments. I read every single one. Like the video if you enjoyed it, share it if you think someone else would, and please don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.